So one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on just briefly here, this is more of a, I'm not going to go too much into like some heavy and technical stuff. I'm going to just sort of talk about a couple of things that I think are kind of meaningful, which are the idea of a mass psychosis. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't work in any of those fields. Um, but one of the things that I'd like to bring up is the idea behind maybe why some of the younger people feel the way that they do. So kind of go with me, give me a little latitude. I'm just sort of talking this out. So if you have a bunch of people, a bunch of younger folks, let's say, that you've been telling, this is certainly I think the case with the boomers, is they've been telling a lot of younger people, like, well, just go and do what I did because what I did worked. Well, that makes sense, but it's a different economy now, and it's a completely different world that exists. So the old go to school, get an education. We talked about this before, but go to school, get an education, work for a company, and they're going to take care of you and give you a bunch of money. That's not going to work anymore. That model doesn't work any longer. So, but if you've got a bunch of people who believe that it does, well, what'll end up happening to them is they kind of start driving themselves crazy because they're like, well, I'm doing all the stuff that you told me to do, but it's not working. And so the idea is that, well, maybe there's something wrong with me, right? Okay, so there's two things. Remember, there's two things that exist. There's the you that exists outward, and then there's the you that exists inside. Okay, so you who reside inside this physical existence, inside the five sense reality that we all collectively share. So what happens is that you can start looking inward and go, okay, well, hold on, maybe there's something wrong with me. This is where you get folks that start going to therapy, and they start looking for a lot of other people out there to help them figure out what's wrong with them inside, when in some cases there's really nothing wrong with you inside. So let me give you an example. The best example I could use would be maybe the story, I think it's called The Prince and the Pauper. I'm not going to tell you the whole story because I haven't heard that story in a very long time. But if I remember right, it's like an old Arabian Nights tale. It's from long ago. It's an old story, and the overall plot of the story is that there's this prince, and what he does is he decides to play this very cruel joke on this young man who kind of looks like him, right? So he has his guards go out and get this guy while he's sleeping, this poor man, well, this poor young guy while he's sleeping, and then bring him back to the palace, and then dress him up like the prince, and then treat him like the prince the whole time, right? And this is going to be this really funny joke, and the joke is going to be because this guy's not going to know what end is up. So they do this, and of course the guy wakes up the next day, he realizes he's the prince, they're treating him like this, and he doesn't know what to make of any of this. And then the next day, right, then he gets, he has his, when he goes to sleep that night, then the guards take him, and they take him back to where he was, and he wakes up and he's poor again. And this goes on and on several times. Now, the denouement, the end of the story goes that, well, of that story goes that what happens is that the people, the guards and all the people that work for the prince finally realize that the poor kid is actually nicer to them than the rich kid is. So they just say, well, screw it, leave him out there. Who cares? I mean, we've been doing this for a month now, so whatever. Well, and that's kind of it's sort of the tale of not treating people cruelly, right? That's sort of the message that overall story conveys. But consider for a second here. Think about it from that perspective. What if you're the guy who's waking up, and you're like, you start questioning reality after a while, right? You start going, oh my God, okay, hold on. I was this one day, but then I'm this. You're back and forth, and before you know it, it starts to kind of drive you crazy, right? Well, that's what can end up happening, I think, to a lot of people, is it can start to actually, make them a little nuts when they're doing everything that you're telling them to go do, right? Or that society at large is telling them to go do. Particularly, when we're seeing this with younger people, because we're seeing all the influencers out there that are trying to influence people to go and do things that are like what they're doing. That's not going to work, right? Remember, we've been over this before. If you tell everyone to go get an engineering degree, and all of a sudden there's 10 million more engineers tomorrow morning or 4 years from now, that's not going to have the effect you thought it was going to have. What's going to end up happening is you're going to have this massive surplus of people that you have really nothing for them to do. It's sort of like that AI thing, right? This is in the news right now. Everybody's all concerned about AI, and it's like, well, the the well, I mean, what I'm seeing that is just they're using that. It's going to be used as an excuse to get rid of a bunch of jobs that they don't want anyway, and that there's not really any more need for those people to be in those jobs. So, well, we'll just use the excuse of, oh, well, it's AI, so we're just going to go ahead and eliminate a bunch of jobs. And oh my gosh, sorry, it's just in the middle, right? Because it's always in the middle, right? Remember, I don't know if we've ever gone over this, but it's never on the bottom. Remember, a company needs the guy who goes and shimmies himself down the mine shaft to dig out the cobalt in Congo and in the Central Africa. They don't need the guy or the girl with the crazy hair putting together her 15th sensitivity training, you know, 15, the sensitivity training seminar to teach the other people to teach about the sensitivity training seminar. Like, they don't need all that shit, right? That's the stuff that they don't need. They need the guy to pull cobalt out of the ground. They need that guy. He's not going anywhere, right? Because of the laws of, the laws of thermodynamics. Well, what about robots? I'm sorry to tell you this kind of stuff. For you guys that have watched a lot of movies, and for you folks that have like, well, no, the robots can replace everything. No, the robots cannot replace everything. That's just not true. It's not how it works. You're going to have an actual person who can take the organic energy. Human beings are at the top of the food chain for that. In fact, actually, I was discussing this. So right here. Okay, top of the food chain is human beings. Okay, in the organic sense. Okay, I'm not going to go into this. I'm not going to go into all this stuff. This is all just stuff I was doing some other thinking. Anyway, so what happens is if you have people that are trying to figure out how they're going to make their lives work, right? And you're telling them this is going to work for them, and it doesn't work, and then it doesn't work again, and it doesn't work again, it doesn't work again. Eventually, they give up, or they start questioning whether or not they're correct internally. So they start trying to look for an internal solution to an external problem. Remember, there's two things. We talked about this, I think, before, a long time ago, or at least a long time ago for me. Again, for you, who knows? But for me, a long time ago, we talked about this, where you have two things, right? You have the laws of physics, and you'll have the laws of conscience, right? Conscience, governs the internal. Physics governs the external, okay? Well, it's an external problem that you're trying to find an internal solution to, right? Now, you can control that. This is where the psychologists get it right, in my view. You can control the way that you respond to it and the way that you think about it. Now, that's true. That part you could do. But you also have to gauge that with what you can actually, how do I want to say this? You have to gauge that with what the situation actually is. So if someone is stealing from you, right, you can respond by doing nothing. It's true, you can. Or you can respond with saying, hey, hold on, I'm not going to allow you to steal from me any longer. That's another response. Or you can respond with saying, listen, you've stolen from me for long enough, and now I want my stuff back. Okay, so those are some of your responses. I mean, there's probably different derivatives thereof, but I mean, one is, passive. The other one is saying, okay, hold on, I've had enough, and now I'm going to take my shit back. This is one of the things that, this is that external problem. Remember, if something like 70 to 90% of all of your energy as a human being is getting siphoned away, and it's getting siphoned away by banks, insurance companies. This mess here, insurance and taxes and interest rates, inflation. It's like 70 to 90% of your entire existence is being siphoned away by this. And I know I say this over and over and over, but it's true. And you're gonna have to actually realize that. Sooner or later, the younger people that are out there are gonna have to realize that, look, It's not that you've been lied to. Remember, I don't remember when it was I said this, but it's like you're born into the middle of a movie, and you rely on the adults around you to bring you up to speed with what's going on in the world. And if they weren't paying attention, you're kind of hosed. You're gonna have to start looking around for other people that can tell you what's going on in the world. And if they don't know, or if they have bad information, or worse, what if they're malevolent? What if they have deliberately bad information? Right? Now, I myself am, I'm neutral, which means that I have every capability of being as malevolent as I want, except that there's no sport in it to me to be malevolent to somebody who is younger, or who is trying to do something legitimately, right? They're trying to make their life good. And it doesn't make any difference what your politics are. It doesn't make, I don't care what your religion is. None of that stuff means anything to me. But you're trying to do something that you think is good with your life, and then someone else is constantly meddling with you, right? There's no sport in it to me to just be like pile on and meddle with you, right? That's not, it's kind of low frequency to me. So for me, my malevolence comes from messing with the system, right? I've been doing this my whole life. So I love to mess with the stuff that's bigger than me. That's way more fun to me. So that's why I'm doing this. See, if I can tell you the truth, like the worst thing that can ever happen, if you understand how the system is set up, the worst thing that can happen is that all of you know the truth. That's the worst thing that could happen, and it doesn't make any difference who's telling you this stuff. I mean, you can go and you could look at all the different conspiracy guys out there, whether it's Alex Jones or David Icke or any of those super famous guys. Um, it's not that they're always right, by the way, but they're not always wrong either. And sometimes the truth, comes out, and it's like, well, it's right there, and it's right there in front of you. And so for me, it's more fun if you all of a sudden, you young people start rebelling. Young, let me give a definition of young, under 50. Start rebelling and saying, okay, hold on, man. I'm going to need you to actually, pay me in honest money. You're gonna. I'm not taking any more of this shit that you're just manipulating the values. This is that measurement thing. So now, what does that have to do with what I was talking about? Well, it has this to do with it, because what happens is just like the analogy I would give you, which is if I had you build a house and I kept changing the dimension or changing the units of measurement on the tape measure, you would go insane eventually. You're like, oh my God, nothing's working. This is exactly what's happening to a lot of people. I'm convinced of this. This is what's happening to a ton of young people. And they're trying to say, and the gurus and the psychologists and the folks that have spent all their time in school trying to figure out, unlocking the human mind and all that kind of stuff. Look, you have but to just look at the world around you. You're born a scientist. I've said this for a long time. You are born that way. It is a natural function of your being to do these kinds of things. If you start looking at everything around you and talking to people, you're going and more importantly, really listen to what they're saying. And listen for the common themes. What'll end up happening is you're going to end up finding out that a lot of folks they're like, man, I've done what someone told me to do, but it's not working, and it's like it's really driving me crazy. This, I would also suggest, is probably what's happening to a lot of folks in the physical sense that are involving themselves in self-mutilation. You take that for what it's worth. Okay, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm not telling anybody what you should and shouldn't do with your body or anything. I'm telling you, though, that I think some of you out there, what you're doing, it is a physical manifestation of something internal, and it's caused by something external, right? It's income, process, and outgo, right? It's the same kind of thing. And so that's what ends up happening. I think it's what's happening to a lot of people, is that they're seeing something, they're being told one thing, they're seeing something else, and they're seeing completely different results. In the meantime, you've, not to be outdone, you've got a bunch of people who came before them who are doing what? They're saying, well, it worked for me. It's your problem if you're not making it work. You're just not working hard enough. You could work sun up to sundown for the next 35 years. I know what I'm talking about here. So you could do that, and it won't make any difference. It won't. It'll make no difference whatsoever. It isn't about how hard you work. It isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. It isn't about how much energy You can create tons of energy. It's how much energy you keep. And most people are keeping almost nothing anymore. And it's getting so bad now. That's why you're having, places like China saying, well, let's have a currency that expires at the end of the day. Like, you get paid for your work, give us this day our daily bread, right? And you go to work and you get your pay, and then you have like till like 10 o'clock that night to spend it. Like, meaning that you no longer have a past that you're connected to, and you no longer have a future. You just have one long endless present of hell on earth. That's what you're stuck with, right? Okay. Now, the way out of that, of course, is to not play that game. Right? I mean, I've said this before. I mean, like, you guys bought millions of goddamn guns for a reason. Nobody's using them. I don't know why we're not doing that, but we've decided that we don't want to do any of that. Like, okay, fine. Then if you don't want to use any of your guns, then that means you're going to start using your brain. And the way that you're going to do that is by getting out of the goddamn system, and not listening to egomaniac Trump people and moron Biden people. I mean, none of these people are going to have any solutions. Keep in mind, remember where leaders come from. Always, this is important. Always ask, what did the leader do before they became leaders? This is really important that you do this. If they came from, let me erase this madness here. I'm going to show you. Hold on, let me start on here. Okay. Bear with me while I erase all this. All right. Let's draw it out just like this. Okay. This is the bottom of the pyramid. This is where you're going to find, well, everybody. This is where you're going to find all the people who are, for lack of a better term, they are the most. The most essential people. So remember the whole 2 weeks to con everybody thing. Everybody wear a mask, all that kind of shit. Yeah. So this is where all those people are. All these people right down here on the bottom of this so-called dominance hierarchy or socialist hierarchy or whatever word you want to use to describe this organizational chart, whatever. All these people here. Well, we were cool with that. Why? Because there was nobody on the roads. It was awesome. You can go 100 miles an hour everywhere, and you can get across town in like 25 minutes. It was badass. But for everybody else, it wasn't. Not so much. And then you've got these people here. So this is your top. Okay. So bottom. Pretty obvious. And then you have pretty much, here, everyone in the middle. Okay. Now, if your leaders, your so-called leaders that are out there, no matter who they are, whether it's, I don't care who it is, it really doesn't matter. If they came from, I would say anything from here up, so about half, I don't know, halfway up the middle or so, or above, and you're gonna keep voting for these people as leaders, you're screwed. You're screwed. There's no way out of it. There's no hope for you. You will be screwed constantly, and it will never ever end. The reason, if you in fact actually look at the story of the Prince and the Pauper, right? We just talked about this actually. I'm not tying this in deliberately. I mean, it just happens to work. Why did they keep the pauper as the prince, right? Because he came from down here, way down at the bottom. He came from down here, and so he understood what it was like to be on the bottom. He understood what it was like to actually have to, wake up every day and try and figure out how they're going to survive. Why do you think that Jesus sat with all the sinners? It wasn't because he was trying to save all of them. It wasn't because just that, but because they were actually going to be. Frankly, they're more interesting. Why? Because your sinners are the people who have every day have to wake up and make the choice between morality and survival. Now, we know what most people are going to choose, right? If I tell you to make an immoral decision, and all of a sudden I put my hand over your mouth and hold your nose, right? I know what decisions you're going to make. Everybody knows. What becomes the most important thing to you if I'm holding your head underwater, what becomes the most important thing to you? Next breath of air, right? I mean, everything else leaves your mind. That's not even you're not even thinking about it, right? That's a very natural thing because remember, you're hardwired for survival. So because of that paradox, this is that conscience and physics thing, right? Constantly back and forth. It's like that on purpose, and so that way you have to make decisions between the two. You have to try and balance them. Okay, that requires you to balance them. You have to figure them out, and you're not always. And trust me, there's a paradox that exists there. It's not really going to work for everybody, right? I mean, like you're going to make shitty decisions. It's how we all are. So you're also going to make really good ones, right? And so when Christ was sit with the sinners, it was because those people had to make daily decisions as to whether or not to choose some kind of moral existence or choose survival. Okay, so when they understand that, so let's say that you're in that situation and you understand deeply, right? Because you come from the bottom, just like our pauper did in the story. Well, that's why he can relate more to the guys that are doing all the work, the guys that are doing all running around doing all the prince's errands and doing all the stupid low level shit that he doesn't want to do. He considers himself to be above, and doesn't have to do any of those kinds of things. Well, it's when I stayed at a hotel, this was years ago, but I stayed at the hell was it anyway, one of the really really expensive ones, a Ritz-Carlton actually, and I had more in common with the wait staff than I had with anybody staying at that hotel. I had more in common with the valet guys, talking about cars and what have you. I had way more in common with them than I did with anybody else in that hotel, any of the patrons of that hotel. So, and that's how it is. So if your leaders are always going to come from here, right? Then what they're going to be the constant problem you're going to run into is any solution they come up with, or solution, any kind of thing like that they're going to come up with. It's going to be a top down, right? It's going to be a top down type solution. Have you ever tried to build a building from top down? Doesn't work, right? It can't. It's not possible, right? You have to build a foundation, and the only people who do the foundations, those are all your bricklayers, your carpenters. That's who knows how to do your foundations. It's going to be the people who actually understand this stuff, and they've had to make the decisions between morality and survival. Okay, they make between physics, the physical existence, which when I apply the word physics there, I'm applying it to the word to the physical existence. Okay, so they have to apply it to physical, and then they have to apply it to the moral. In other words, can they live with it? A lot of people have to do a lot of immoral things to continue to survive. This is a constant, right? This is why it's why I'm not judgmental. It's why I'm the least judgmental human being that I know. And it's because I understand it. I've been there many times, and when you're in that kind of situation and you decide you have to make a conscious effort to not lie to somebody, because it would be easier, right? You could just lie to them and blow it off and and keep collecting your salary. You could just lie. You're like, oh my God, I just shot this 8-year-old kid because reasons, and quick, sprinkle some crack on him, right? That's you can get out of it, but you had to lie your way out of it, and which is why you'll become an alcoholic or a drug addict or something like that. And that's what happens. I mean, it's self-sabotage, right? I mean, you understand, you don't escape your conscience. This is where Peterson and I agree with him on that one. This is a bunch of stuff I disagree with, but I'm with him on that one. You don't escape that. That follows you around everywhere, like herpes. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. So you go to wherever you go, there you are, right? So anyway, if you're always going to be trying to get your leaders from the top, your solutions are always going to be top down, and it ain't never going to work. It ain't never going to work. I mean, you might have some of it, cities to nowhere and flying cars and crap like that. I mean, you're not going to get that. You're just not. This isn't a leftist or liberal thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about like just this is a financial reality. You're not going to be able to. It's like you can't print your way out of debt either, right? I mean, you could do it, but you ruin all your credibility. That's fine. I mean, U.S. dollar's dead anyway, but as far as trying to make that to where it's going to work as some kind of a philosophy that's going to work for a long period of time, no, it's not going to happen. So not to get too far afield there, but to answer to to tie off what I was talking about originally when I mentioned in this problem that young people are having, it this is one of these things where it's like the reason why you're upset, or the reason why you're trying to figure out why life ain't working, it's not because you need to work harder. It's not. I believe in hard work. Dude, I haven't had a vacation since 1987. It's not a joke either. Um, I believe in hard work. I believe in people, I believe in responsibility, all that stuff. Private property, all of it. I'm down with all that shit. But if you're going to have all those rules, then those rules have to stay consistent for everyone, and they're not. And that's a big problem. That's probably the biggest problem. And because of that, you've got a bunch of people, young people in particular, that are trying to figure out why it is that none of these things are working. Well, it's because the rules are different for you. The rules work for it's okay when we do it, kind of thing, right? You've heard that before. That's what's happening. So you've got and that level of hypocrisy has gotten to the point now where I don't know how anybody takes any. I don't know how any of you take any politician, and I mean any of them, across the board, any of them seriously. I don't know how anyone takes any of this stuff seriously. I don't know how you take cops seriously, judges seriously, prosecutors, any of the system, any of this shit. I don't know how you take any of that stuff seriously any longer. I don't know why you're giving them one more bloody penny for anything. And you're seeing this manifest itself in a lot of people just checking out mentally. They're just saying, nah, you know what, screw it. It's a defense mechanism. And it's a defense mechanism, unfortunately, it's like a passive aggressive defense mechanism, because we all know what happens if you're aggressive, right? That's when you're lock and load, man. You're ready to rock and roll, okay? And you mow down anyone in that system, and it's just like that. That's aggressive, but people don't want to do that because it's been a lot of it's been bred out, right? I mean, how many public hangings have you gone to in your lifetime? I'm guessing 0, right? Um, as with most people, how many times have you sat in a criminal court, just in the peanut gallery? How many of you have ever sat in a criminal court case in a peanut gallery and listened to anything going on there? How many times? For most people, it's going to be 0. So they have no idea what's going on in the world, in the real world. That there are people out there who have to deal with that. So it's something to consider. It's something to kind of think about. That a lot of the things that people think are internally wrong with them, there's something they've done that's wrong, or that they're not doing enough to to get out there in the world and become successful, whatever that means to them, assuming it's within reason. Again, it's not like I'm trying to sprout wings and fly. That's not it. It's something that's possible and doable, which for a lot of people, if you talk to them, a lot of folks have very realistic goals. They want to own a house, and they want to have a decent car that runs, and some kids and so on. A lot of people say that stuff. Those are basic things, but they're not happening, and that's driving a lot of, I think, younger people just batshit at this point. They don't know what to do, and they're looking at it going, this isn't making any sense, and they're trying to fix something internally wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing. Look, I mean, I would tell anybody out there, before you start chopping body parts off, that you probably need to start looking around, like, what kind of life do you want for real? Take all the external stuff out of your head, clear your mind, and ask, like, what kind of life do you actually want? That's it. Just what do you want? What do you want out of life? I mean, you're here one time, so, well, as far as you know anyway. I mean, maybe there's reincarnation or recidivism, depending on how you want to look at that. But if that's the case, what the hell kind of life do you want? Think about that, and then go, okay, well, maybe what it is that you're doing, you're trying to get something that really isn't attainable. And if it's not attainable, then maybe back it off and say, okay, what is attainable? And if that part's attainable, then maybe go after something like that.